Welcome to the April 2022 Now reading. Clayton, do you want to make your announcement now?
I just wanted to mention that on Thursday, we have a workshop happening. It's called Building a Brand with Andrea Fesenfeld from 7 till 9 p.m. Eastern. And it should be really interesting because we don't usually have people coming in to talk to us about branding. And she's done quite a bit of work with publicists and creating author brands, so mostly in the romance genre, but she said that it will apply, the techniques will apply to all genres. So it would be nice to see you folks out. I think you'd really enjoy it. Thank you, Tess.
Okay, sounds good. Did you want to say anything about LitFest?
You've been getting emails, I think, from Dawn, and we have a lot of the information up on the website. But it is happening in person for sure in Thunder Bay on May 13th and 14th. We have a really terrific author coming in, Kathy Marie Buchanan. Well, her first two books were international bestsellers, and it looks like her latest book that's just been out for a few months is on the way to doing that as well. I read her latest book and really, really enjoyed it. Thought it was quite interesting. She's going to be doing a reading that's open to the public on Friday afternoon. Then we have the LitFest dinner and awards. She'll be doing a keynote there. And Kathy's also putting our workshop on Saturday morning on the 14th. You can purchase the tickets through our website. And the workshop's a terrific value, $10 for members. Mm-hmm. The dinner, we're giving a pretty good deal on the dinner too, because we're not even covering costs with what we're charging, I think. So it'll be a nice evening if you can make it.
Where's the workshop at, Clayton?
The workshop will be at the Prince Arthur Hotel, as will be the dinner. The dinner and awards ceremony starts at 6. All the information is on the website.
Yeah. Okay,
and
great.
The reading will be at the Definitely Superior Art Gallery, which is close.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vera?
Hello. I would like to invite everyone in this intimate circle to the Wednesday write-in next week from 7 to 9. An hour of discussion and an hour of writing, although there's been more discussion than writing, in fairness. And the following week, on the 28th, I will be presenting a Haibun haiku workshop, how to write it, hopefully it'll be a refresher course for some people who already know how to write haiku. But there will be a little presentation on haiku because it's an integral part of Haibun. 7 to 9 on the 28th. Please come.
Thank you very much, Vera.
Okay.
So this month, our theme is our story, the story of us. But every story is, in one way or other, the story of us. This is also the last reading of the season, as we are hoping to break for spring, whenever she chooses to show herself, and for summer, that mythic being waiting in the wings. Tonight, we also bid farewell to Sue Blott, who has coordinated the readings and rounded up readers since late 2016. Sue has been the unseen but most important face of the readings, and she will be missed. Thank you, Sue, for the last 6 years. It's been a blast. Also, Sue has one of her plays being presented, and you'll have to explain that.
I have to explain that?
Yes, yeah. When, where, how, who?
Okay. Well, also with Marianne, right?
Yes.
We both have plays. It's 10 by 10, so it's 10 plays, 10 playwrights, 10 plays, 10 minutes each, 10 directors. It's at Magnus Theatre on June 17th and June the 18th, Friday night, Saturday matinee, and a Saturday evening. and it's a lot of fun.
Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Tonight's readers are Teresa Kelly, Marianne Jones, and Mary E. Gastmeier. Our first reader is Teresa Kelly.
Good evening. Now, since you don't have my bio, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a native from Northern Ontario. Lived in other places for a number of years and then returned. And for the last 2 decades, I've had my own business. Now that I'm getting ready to retire, I have more time to spend on writing, and I'm hoping to pursue that. The first book I wrote was a biography for a local woman. Now I'm working on a second book. It's finished, and it's in editing. I'm not published. And I am in the middle of income tax season, so I hope you will enjoy what I put together. We lived an isolated life, and I was very lonely. At an early age, tired of being alone, I began to create friends and an extended family. Nasha was my first sister. An inventive child, she found playmates and activities for us all summer. We weren't allowed to be in regular classrooms, so she took me to her school, and we spent a lot of time there. It was under an elm tree in a willow thicket by the river. The teacher, Miss Pretty, was a kind woman, very fond of her students. Impeccably dressed each day, she favored flowered dresses, shiny shoes with buckles, and small pearls. It was much more fun than a regular schoolroom. We made everything ourselves. The pencils burned sticks. Writing paper, grocery bags neatly cut into squares with a penknife. A flat rock became a desk, our bench a fallen log. We copied letters and words from pages torn from magazines and learned to make dandelion bracelets, cloaks of invisibility, and crowns of goldenrod. Sometimes we rode dragons into the clouds, looking for palaces and magical lands. It was intoxicating. Tara, my second sister, was powerful and fearless. She'd sit in the tops of trees as they swayed in summer storms, completely unafraid, for both the wind and the sky loved her. She had a jet black pony called Coco and a wild wolf pup, Tallow. Riding Coco, Tallow running at her side, we dashed through the trees, a war cry on my lips. One day, she promised, she would ride to the moon on a dragon. All magical creatures come from the moon, you know. There were many others over the years. Mora had horses and lived in the mountains with the Apaches. Often at night, I'd climb from the bedroom window and run under the moon with her and Tallow at my side. Tanan came from Mars on a spaceship. She told us stories of distant planets and stars. Moro didn't believe her. I think she was jealous. Shana had heavy leather boots and raced motorcycles all over the world. No one could stop her. Koi was mistress of a sailing ship. It sported huge dark sails and a polished wooden wheel. We'd fight through raging storms on Lake Superior while running from the king's men. She was a pirate, but I knew they would never catch her. Now Marina has come to me. She isn't accepted in polite society, for she's a vampire. Turned into a night walker by a monster, she fights, becoming evil, and vows to hurt no one or no anything. Each night is a struggle to find her way in a hostile and lonely world, but she manages. She's an artist, passionate about stained glass. The glass she works with is salvaged from crumbling buildings and abandoned houses. Now she lives in the mountain with a scarred tomcat and 2 dogs, but she isn't alone, for she has friends, a lover, and she has me. That's it.
Is that your whole reading?
That's my whole reading.
Okay, thank you. That was awesome.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I remember doing that when I was a kid. That brings back memories, I have to say. Thank you very much for reading for us.
You're welcome. I appreciate you listening.
So our second reader is Mary E. Gastmeier. From early years spent in the bush of northwestern Ontario to teen years spent on the sun-soaked beaches of Australia, life has taken me down a wondrous road. My mid-20s sees me married and living and working in California, Southeast Asia, and the South Pacific. In my mid-30s, I returned to Canada and settled in Thunder Bay. As a single mother of 2 young girls, I become a full-time student at Lakehead University. I will attain my MA in English Literature with a specialization in women's studies, as well as my Bachelor of Education. I recently retired after many years in the high school English classroom, then later patrolling the halls as a vice principal, and finally as a lecturer at the Faculty of Education. For far too long, I have been too busy to write, and I am just now returning to putting pen to paper. This endeavor is both daunting and enticing. I am enthralled by the Japanese tradition of mending fractured objects with gold, believing that a broken object has a history and therefore is beautiful. As one who has a history, I am thrilled by this philosophy. Mary, welcome to the reading, and please go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much, Tessa. And I'm very nervous, so if my voice gets shaky or whatever, just bear with me, okay? This is the first time I've done anything like this. Okay, panel vans and surfboards. I lost my virginity in the back of his green Holden panel van. Like every quintessential surfer's van, Tony's has boards on the roof racks and sand in the mattress. Fingers of still damp hair hang freely down my back. Salty skin against salty skin brings the taste of the ocean with each kiss. The soft lapping of the waves provide the background music for our night of sweet caresses and passionate lovemaking. Tony is my first love. The term evokes intense emotions, soaring highs, awkward fumbles in the dark, silent and sweet desires. At 17, every sense is heightened and magnified. I believe I am invincible and the euphoria will last forever. For me, this night is emblematic of life in Australia. My days revolve around sun and surf, music and dancing, love and friendships. It is the blissful life of a young girl finding love and home for the first time. From Tony, I joyfully accept the former, and from Australia, I embrace the latter. However, the idea of first love is bittersweet. With the passing of the years, there is a longing for a time that never can be recaptured. Each faded and yellowed photograph, every curled up corner, taunts with a happiness frozen in time. In my mind, I am 17 again and transported back to windswept hair, oil-slick bodies, and salt-kissed skin. Before the joy of the light-drenched Australian shores came a period of sadness and darkness in the far northwest of Ontario, Canada. With the sudden death of my father when I was 9, life seems to spiral into unhappiness. My family now consists of my widowed 29-year-old mother and 3 younger siblings. We move from one small town to the next, and a life of change and upheaval becomes the norm. And then my mother accepts a job on the other side of the world, Australia. As soon as I see the ocean and the white sand shore of Coogee Beach, my restless mind settles. I know that I have found home. Where once I felt adrift, I now feel anchored. Where once I felt the cold north wind on my face, I now feel the warm southern sun on my back. It is love. Coogee Beach is a small suburb on the eastern coast of New South Wales. Sydney is a 20-minute bus ride and another world away. In the early 1970s, she is a well-kept secret. The locals jealously guard her pristine beach and clear turquoise waters. Surfers have their own culture, music, and dress code, and each lives and surfs at their own beach. In this pre-tourist era, intruders and strangers are frowned upon as interlopers. However, I quickly adapt chameleon-like to my new surroundings. My long, mousy brown hair is sun-streaked to a golden blonde, and my pale skin is tanned to a dark bronze. I look the part, and I am accepted. It wasn't until I meet Tony that the acceptance turns into belonging, and looking the part becomes being myself in a new shape and form. It is inevitable that we will meet, even though we live at different beaches. Coogee's Oceanic Hotel is a surfer's mecca, bringing together everyone from Sydney's beach suburbs. It is here that I meet him. For me, the attraction is immediate and intense. For him, the feelings are the same as we gravitate toward each other like opposite poles of a magnet. His curly blonde hair falls below his shoulders. He has deep blue eyes, a sweet smile, and a gentle laugh. He is quiet, even a little shy. My outgoing and effervescent self finds its match. From that first meeting, we become inseparable. Over the course of a year, our relationship evolves from friendship to a passionate romance. This relationship both defines and melds with my story throughout these early years in Australia. His love helps me through tumultuous times and turns them into adventures, which turns them into fond memories and warm thoughts. For a 17-year-old self-proclaimed hip surfie, the greatest hardship I have to endure is attending school. My non-attendance has become a habit, and my mother, a teacher at my school, is becoming slightly more vigilant. It is a strict, all-girls private school in a posh suburb. The hideous brown uniforms are mandatory and include hat, gloves, tie, and crested blazer. No wonder I take every opportunity to skip school and head for the beach. Even the bus stop helps me in my shenanigans. It is enticingly located right across from the beach. Before I reach the bottom of the hill from home, I can smell the salt, hear the waves breaking, and feel the hot sun on my face. Superman-like, I use the bus stop to change into the bikini I wear under my uniform. In my backpack is the obligatory sarong. Like clockwork, the green panel van turns the corner, and it is Tony to the rescue. Bright and clear days run one into the next. Days are spent surfing and then flopping exhaustedly onto the hot sand. My secret delight is to pretend to sleep and through squinting eyes watch him absorbed in waxing his surfboard. The wind rustles through his curly hair. His firm body, muscles flexing, is thrown into the task. Suddenly he looks up and catches me watching him. We smile in unison, our eyes lock and widen in awe at the love that seems all-encompassing. At the beach, we are in our own world, but like any bubble, this ideal will burst with the creeping of the hands on the clock. At 3 o'clock, it is a mad scramble to transform back into the innocent schoolgirl. The green panel van will chaperone me home, where I will stay long enough to shower, have something to eat, and change into a pair of flared jeans and a skimpy crocheted crop top. I sit on the front stairs waiting for Tony, and I never have a long wait. At 7 o'clock, we will head to the Oceanic Hotel and immediately be lost in a sea of surfers. We will laugh, dance to music, drink beer, and avoid the inevitable drunken altercations. However, just like Cinderella, I will be safely home by midnight. It is a carefree time of innocence, joy, and happiness. Tony introduces me to beach culture, to the ocean, to surfing, to being part of a group. In the process of allowing someone to occupy my heart, I discover parts of myself that I start to piece together as though I am a giant jigsaw puzzle. It is my first love that helps me discover these pieces of my heart and magically connect them. I blossom with his magic, and by the time we are 18, we believe we are ready to live together. It is a one-bedroom red brick bungalow not too far from the beach. We set up house like two kids at play. We have so little, yet our small home feels like a castle. To complete the wholesome family picture, we adopt Ralph, a golden Labrador retriever, who promptly destroys everything in sight. Moving in together is a practicality based on circumstances beyond our control. My mother decides to move back to Canada, and despite her protestations and cajoling, I refuse to leave Tony and Australia. My two brothers leave within days of each other, and then my mother and sister follow several weeks later. It is Tony who makes each trip to the airport with me. Seeing my family slowly dwindle and eventually evaporate has a profound effect on me as I come to realize that I am without a family as a safety net. Was I ready to fly solo? It is then that I realize that I am not alone and Tony is always along for the ride. He gives me the strength to see the disappearing act as an adventure rather than a tragedy. In fact, I don't recall missing my family. Tony is all I need. Even during tumultuous times, he keeps me safe. It is during my 18th birthday party when he earns his knight in shining armor badge. We have the party at a friend's house in Coogee. Music is blaring, people are dancing, drinks are flowing. Suddenly a dull roar is heard, and without warning, the party and the house are demolished when a gang of bikers smash through the double windows in the living room. Hell comes to life. Furniture is destroyed and thrown through the now glassless windows. Kitchen cupboards are ripped off the walls, dishes tossed about like frisbees. Walls are destroyed with punched out holes. Fists, knives, and chains fly in all directions. My face gets in the way of a fist, but Tony drags me into a back bedroom and barricades the door with a dresser. This delaying tactic gives us enough time to crawl out of the window and, hidden by the bushes, run to the panel van. Our first stop is the hospital. I am bruised and bloody, but relatively unharmed. The reason for the demolition is simply hatred between rival groups. Surfers and bikers always clash and usually remain in their own territory. In the years that follow, Tony often comes to my rescue, as I seem to have a knack for stumbling into mishaps and troublesome situations. Our relationship changes as we grow older and assume new roles and identities. Childish dreams suffice until adult realities come calling. It is difficult to pinpoint when our relationship shifts from lovers back to friends. We are together for 5 years, and to some extent, Tony remains the same, but I am transforming. Ironically, Tony helps me find the pieces of myself that will have me drift away. I believe he should be ambitious, but he works for the local council as a garbage collector because it gives him the afternoons free to surf. I am slowly climbing the corporate ladder and taking night courses to further my career. I believe our visions of the future differ too much. My premonition becomes a reality. Gone were the tender embraces, the sweet words whispered softly, and the passionate caresses. I end the relationship. Being a loving man, a man whose nature does not harbor bitterness or resentment, he helps me move to my apartment, ironically in the same posh neighborhood as the school I once made every effort to avoid. It is close to the city and away from the beach. Our paths rarely cross. On my own, it takes many years to hone my own safety net. For a while, my solution is to date randomly and frantically. I spend the next several years searching for security, love, and commitment. I attempt unsuccessfully to find Tony's qualities and nature in every man I meet. 30 years after our final goodbyes, I traveled down the south coast from Sydney to that same beach where we parked the panel van all those years ago. Visions of that night dance in my mind as Tony walks toward me. His wife and 4 sons follow him closely. He works for a company that makes surfboards, and he still surfs every afternoon and continues to have a life where he lives for his passions. On that same visit, I returned to Coogee Beach. The once hidden gem is now a mecca for international travelers and teeming with backpackers. The Oceanic Hotel, where we first found each other, is demolished and replaced by a concrete and glass 5-star resort. Everything changes and shifts, except my memories and precious moments frozen in time in blurred and faded photographs. Recollections of my first love are no doubt sweetened and idealized by the passing of the years. In my memory, he is my true north, always constant. In those quiet moments when my thoughts turn to those times long past, I smile and remember a green panel van and surfboards, and sun and surf, and laughter and love.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was fascinating reading, or listening, I should say. So our third reader is Marianne Jones. Marianne was born and raised in Thunder Bay. Despite being the world's slowest writer, she has managed to publish 8 books in various genres. Her most recent work, Maud and Me, is a literary novel about the unlikely friendship between a minister's wife in Marathon, Ontario during the 1980s and the late Lucy Maud Montgomery, author of Anne of Green Gables. Marianne is most excited that her 10-minute play, Waiting for the End, will be performed at Magnus Theatre this June as part of the 10 by 10 festival. Marianne will be reading from her soon-to-be-released mystery, Death on the Water, a sequel to the Serenity Stone Murder. Marianne?
Okay, thank you, Tessa. Yes, I was torn between should I read from Maud and Me or should I read from my new work, which isn't published yet. But I decided to go with the new work. I shall read from the first chapter of Death on the Water, which is sort of the continuing adventures of Louise and Margaret, who were best friends from the fictional town of Jackpine. Chapter 1. Victor had always had a way of spoiling family gatherings. The discovery of his body, just as the Gagnon family reunion was getting into full swing, was a case in point. It was Louise Gagnon, Victor's niece, who first spotted him floating face down in the next bay, as she and her best friend Margaret Bain were out for a walk to escape the party and Louise's relatives. The 2 women had been following the footpath that meandered through the woodsy area along the shoreline of Pine Bay, where Victor's lavish summer camp sprawled on the north shore of Lake Superior. Louise's Lasha Apso, Vince, snuffled contentedly as he trotted ahead. "I'm so glad you came with me," Louise confided. "I really don't enjoy these things. My family's not the easiest, especially for a whole week camp. Maybe cousin Denise was feeling the same way and brought her friend Rose along as a buffer. If people feel that way, why come?" Margaret stopped to remove a twig that had attached itself to her sandal. "It's expected. Funny thing is, they don't get along with each other, but they'd be mortally offended if anyone stayed away. Sometimes I'm grateful my extended family is so distant, emotionally as well as geographically," Margaret commented. "I don't have to deal with family obligations, apart from annual Christmas cards and graduation and wedding gifts." "Why is Vince making those horrible noises?" she added. changing the subject abruptly to Louise's constant furry companion. Vince waved his plumed tail in acknowledgement of hearing his name. Adenoids, Louise said. Doesn't seem to bother him. The vet said, what? Her voice trailed off as they reached a lookout point at the crest of a rocky rise. Margaret followed Louise's gaze to the lake, where a sailboat appeared to be hung up on the shoals. That's Moth, Louise said in a puzzled voice. That's Victor's boat. As the boat turned sideways in the breeze, Margaret could make out the name Moth on the side. But why was it, to all appearances, hung up with no sign of its captain on board? Victor, even at 72, was an expert and competitive sailor who loved racing his Lightning on Lake Superior, even in adverse conditions. In fine weather like this, it seemed unlikely he would have run into difficulty. Louise scrambled down the path into the bay to get a closer look, followed by Margaret and Vince. Squinting into the sun, shading her eyes with one hand, she spotted, no. Yes. A shock went through her as she saw what looked like a person floating, face down beside the boat, tethered by a rope to the mainsail. A person with Victor's white hair and long frame. Victor! Louise screamed to the unresponsive figure. Help! Knowing that her voice wouldn't carry back to anyone at the camp, she ran back, followed by Margaret with an excited Vince racing ahead. By the time they arrived at Victor's beautifully landscaped property, the two women were both gasping for breath. Louise could only flail her arms to get people's attention. Her brother, Rael's wife, Doreen, noticed her first. Louise, she said, what's the matter? Did you see a bear? No bear, gasped Louise. Victor! What about Victor? Victor's younger cousin, Michael, said. What's he done now? Victor's on his boat, remember? Rael said. Louise flapped her hands.
Shit.
Marianne.
You're muted.
Unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yes. You need to go back a bit, though.
Oh,
Louise
okay.
flapped her hands.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
okay. She flapped her hands. Okay. Where are they? Oh, yes. Her brother, Rael's wife, Doreen, noticed her first. Louise, she cried, what's the matter? Did you see a bear? No bear, gasped Louise. Victor! What about Victor? Victor's younger cousin, Michael, said. What's he done now? Victor's on his boat, remember? Rael said. Louise flapped her hands up and gasping, no! In the water! I saw him beside Moth, face down. All those within earshot froze. Michael's jaw dropped. For once, he had no sarcastic comeback. Where? Rael demanded. Margaret waved back in the direction from where she and Louise had come. Around the point, next bay, she said, too far out to swim. Michael and Rael ran to the dock where Victor's roundabout was tied. Michael started the engine while Rael unfastened the hitch and jumped in. They took off at full throttle in the direction Margaret had indicated as the rest of the gang clown, surmising that something serious was going on, gathered around the three women. During the minutes that followed, Louise, having caught her breath, was able to tell her story to the others. Amid the horrified exclamations, 2-year-old Daniel, Rael and Doreen's son, began crying, upset by the sudden chill in the party atmosphere. Michael and his wife, Lisa's 16-year-old daughter, Simone, summed up the general change in mood. Whoa, Uncle Vic, she said. Bummer. 10 minutes passed, during which Louise and Margaret were bombarded with questions from the others. How far out had the boat been? Were they sure it had been Moth? Could they be certain it had been Victor they had seen floating? What had happened? To which they kept repeating, it was on the shoals. Yes, yes, and she didn't know. It doesn't make sense, Victor's Aunt Monique said, sounding indignant. Victor's an expert sailor. Was he alive? Lise, Michael's wife, asked in a tremulous voice. I don't know, Louise said. I couldn't tell. It didn't look like it. Lise burst into tears. No one paid any attention. As an outsider, Margaret was feeling distinctly uncomfortable. She glanced over at Denise's friend Rose, wondering if she was feeling the same way. Rose was standing awkwardly beside Denise, her expression unreadable, glancing around as though unsure how to react. She looks the way I feel, thought Margaret, totally out of place in the middle of a family tragedy. Lisa's sobs and Daniel's wails were interrupted by the sound of the roundabout's engine as the boat appeared in view, towing him off. Distracted, the weepers stopped crying and watched with the others as the boats approached. The expressions on Réal's and Michael's faces and the crumpled form of their passenger awkwardly arranged on the back seat answered Lisa's question. Silence draped itself over the people on shore. Only the sound of the engine slowing, then cutting out, followed by the washing of its wake, could be heard. The motorboat slowed, gliding into position beside the dock. Réal jumped onto the dock and tied the boat off before helping Michael lift Victor's inert form out. It was an awkward job. At 6 feet tall and an athletic build, Victor wasn't an easy burden to lug from the rocking boat to the dock. Panting and red-faced from the exertion, they lifted him out of the boat and stretched him out on the dock on his back. Then they looked at the watching group with the unspoken question on their faces. What now? We should call an ambulance, Victor's Aunt Monique suggested. Shouldn't we call the police? Louise ventured. We should call the OPP, said Michael in his most authoritative voice. They'll want to decide when to call an ambulance. You're up on police procedure now, are you? His sister Denise, always bristled. Michael gave her a dismissive look that put her on the edge of furious tears. What about 911? Margaret said. Being an outsider, she felt uncomfortable making suggestions, but she wanted them to focus on the matter at hand. They'll know what to do. Louise agreed and ran to retrieve her phone from inside the camp. She punched in the 3 numbers with trembling fingers. 911, what is your emergency? A female voice answered. Louise's throat was too dry to speak the first time she tried. She took a deep breath and quavered, we're at a family camp on Pine Bay, and there's been a drowning. As soon as the words escaped her mouth, she began to tremble, and tears began running down her cheeks. The dispatcher took the news calmly. What is your name, ma'am? Louise pulled herself together and answered all the woman's questions, identifying herself and their location. After being assured that emergency services was on the way, she returned to the group huddled on the dock and shore. They're sending help, she said. What do we do with Victor? Doreen asked. A middle-aged woman with silver blonde hair, she said. Is it against the rules to move him? It doesn't seem right to leave him here like this. It should be okay to move him inside, said Michael. It's not like this is a homicide scene or anything. His wife Lise stopped weeping long enough to speak up. It's getting close to lunchtime, she said. If we put him in the camp, people aren't going to feel comfortable about going inside to make lunch or eat with him there. Well, it's not respectful to leave him on the dock, Doreen rejoined. Any neighbor going by in a boat could see him. Let's put him in the sauna, Réal said. He'll have privacy and won't be in the way. Everyone agreed to Réal's idea, and he and Michael carried Victor into the sauna and laid him down on the long bench. That done, they stepped outside into the sunshine and closed the sauna door. Well, Nick said, as long as we're waiting, we might as well have lunch. Simone was aghast. How can you think about lunch right now, she said, staring at her grandmother in indignation. Monique was unperturbed. We have to eat, she shrugged, and headed toward the Cedar main building, followed by Louise and Louise's sister-in-law, Doreen. Simone, in 16-year-old disgust, stormed off to her family's trailer. Oh, dear, her mother, Lise, said, watching her go. I'd better go after her. She was close to her Uncle Victor. She crossed the manicured lawn to the trailer parked beside the camp. The others watched her go, not commenting. It was no secret that both Lise and Michael had hoped that single, childless Victor might make his niece Simone his heir, just as his grandfather had done for him. "Where's Crystal?" Louise asked. There was a silence as the family remembered Victor's girlfriend. "She's out for her morning run," Denise said. "This will be a shock for her." Louise felt a wave of sympathy for the young woman, Victor's latest. "You think it isn't for the rest of us?" snapped Denise, turning her reddened face toward Louise. "Crystal is just Victor's latest. We're a family." "Of course, I didn't mean that," Louise said soothingly. "I just meant, well, it would be a shock for her, wouldn't it?" "Beacon," Rael interrupted. "Crystal's coming." Both women turned to where Rael was nodding. Crystal, her light brown hair pulled back into a ponytail, was walking up the camp road toward them. Her sleeveless t-shirt was spotted with damp sweat marks. She was unclipping her water bottle from the waistband of her shorts to take a swig when she spotted the others watching her. She waved. "Hi," she said. "I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. Victor still out sailing?" There was a momentary silence. Louise elected herself the bearer of bad news, not trusting her family's tact or goodwill. She went up to Crystal and touched her on the shoulder. "Dear, you should come inside and sit down. Something's happened." Crystal glanced at their faces, confused. Suddenly her pale blue eyes widened in fear. "What's happened? Is it Victor? Has something happened to him?" "Well, yes. There's been an accident." "Is he okay? Where is he?" Crystal's voice became shrill with panic. "He drowned," Monique said. The young woman looked white. Her legs buckled. Louise tried to keep her from falling. Rael came over to help. Together they lowered her to the lawn. "Put your head on your knees," Rael instructed her. Over his shoulder, he said to his great aunt, "Monique, what is wrong with you?" "What?" Monique said. As the other two attended to Crystal, joined by other family members, she watched with an annoyed expression. Then she turned with a shrug and went back inside the camp. The others were focused on Crystal, who was weeping softly. Louise stroked her shoulder, making soothing sounds. "Do you want a drink of water?" Rael asked. Crystal nodded. Someone picked up her water bottle from the grass where she had dropped it and handed it to her. She took a sip and tried to slow down her breathing. "What happened?" she asked in a shaky voice. They filled her in on what little they knew. "I don't understand. Victor was an expert sailor, and it's a calm day. It doesn't make any sense," she said, starting to tear up again. "None of us understand," Louise said. "Are you able to stand up?" said Rael. "Do you want to go inside?" She nodded. "I think I need to lie down," she said in a faint voice. They helped her to her feet and walked with her to the back entrance of the camp that led upstairs to the loft master bedroom Crystal and Victor had been sharing. Crystal lay down on the bed as Louise hovered near the door. "Can I get you something to eat? Or maybe a cup of tea?" "Thank you. You're very kind. I think I just want to be alone for a while." Louise nodded and closed the door gently. "Poor thing," she said to Margaret. "Sometimes I could just strangle Monique." Her brother Rael overheard. "Take a number," he said. The three of them went into the open concept living and dining area where Monique was overseeing lunch preparations. Doreen and Denise were setting out plates of cold cuts, buns with salads and iced tea while Daniel changed spins around the room. Rose was standing apart from the others, glancing around the room, but dropping her eyes whenever anyone looked in her direction. "It's self-serve," Monique announced. "Grab a plate and help yourself." After putting half a sandwich, a dainty scoop of potato salad, and a generous serving of greens on her plate, Monique seated herself at the dining table. Her daughter Denise sat down next, as far from her mother as possible. Rose sat down beside Denise. Doreen lifted Daniel onto a chair and gave him a sandwich cut in quarters. Food's on the table, Monique announced to the three who had just joined them. No one's going to wait on you. As if, thought Louise. She handed Margaret a plate and waited to allow Margaret to serve herself before helping herself to her lunch and sitting by Denise. She leaned toward Denise and asked quietly, "How are you doing?" Denise pushed her salad around her with her fork. Her eyes filled with tears and her voice was quivering. "It's so horrible," she said, and a few tears broke free and rolled down her cheeks. Louise reached out and Denise turned and sobbed on her shoulder. "What's the matter, sis? Lose your backer?" called out Michael, who had just come into the camp at that moment. "Shut up, Michael," Rael said. "Whoa, cousin. We all know that Denise is broken up, but without Victor, the chances of her little play project being produced is nil." "Show some respect, Michael," Doreen snapped. "Victor just died." "Don't pretend your heart is broken about that," Monique said. Doreen stabbed a piece of lettuce with unnecessary force, but didn't answer. Everyone in the family knew better than to cross swords with Monique, who could be ferocious, and who, as her great-nephew Rael had once put it, knew where all the bodies were buried. She could be vicious and attacking and humiliating anyone who opposed her, and her 82 years had not weakened either her memory or her tongue. Her son Michael seemed to have inherited her pleasure in taking jabs at people, but not her ability to intimidate them. The rest of the meal went by in somber quiet, apart from the clinking of forks on plates and Daniel's feet tapping the leg of his chair rhythmically. Margaret glanced around, taking in the elegant room with its cedar cathedral ceilings and hardwood floors. Large picture windows gave a wide-angle view of the landscape property and the bay. Framed pictures of Victor, standing in front of Moth and holding up trophies from sailing regattas, were artfully arranged to the right of the porthole. But what dominated the room was not the magnificent view of the lake or the high ceilings or even the displays of Victor's sailing prowess. It was a 5-foot-tall portrait of J.P. Gagnon, patriarch to the clan, gathered in his grandson Victor's summer camp that loomed over them from the south wall. J.P.'s gaze was fixed on some spot just over their heads, like the man himself, conveying his sense of his own superiority. It was impossible to be inside the camp and not feel the presence of that portrait. It reminded Margaret of the pictures of kings and queens and long-forgotten aristocrats she had seen in art galleries with Louise. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've had 3 terrific readers this evening. I'm sorry we didn't have a larger crowd, but hopefully we will have plenty of views on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. That would be great. This is, like I say, we've had 3 great readers. So thank you very much. This is a great way to end our season. And, thank you everyone for joining us this year.